Donald Trump just made a disgusting post on Truth Social that reveals his desperation, his narcissism. He claimed that he could have American journalist Evan Gershkovich released from a Russian prison, but he is waiting to do so until after he is elected, so he's effectively holding him hostage himself. His post on Truth Social reads, Evan Gershkovich, the reporter from the Wall Street Journal who is being held by Russia, will be released almost immediately after the election, but definitely before I assume office. He will be home, safe, and with his family. Vladimir Putin, president of Russia, will do that for me, but not for anyone else, and we will be paying nothing. So rather than Trump saying, I'll call my friend Putin and show you how I can work with world leaders to release journalists and to meet some end goal, Trump is effectively saying, vote for me. If you don't vote for me, I won't call Putin and this journalist won't be released. He's effectively holding Gershkovich hostage himself for political gain. Because if Donald Trump has the ability to do this before he even gets into office like he claims, then he should just do it. He should show us what he's made of. He should show us that he has this power and then he can release this man, because if not, Evan is staying in jail longer just due to Trump's ego. Andy Kroll on Twitter said, I rarely weigh in on Trump's posts, but this latest one should not escape your attention. Trump seems to say here that his relationship with Putin is such that he could secure Evan Gershkovich's release, but won't do it until he wins the election. Keep that in mind. The Shallow State said, take a moment to process this post by Trump. I don't usually post his posts, as you know, but this one is so stereotypically emblematic of three things: his narcissism, his sociopathy, and his desperation. Narcissism, this post is only about him. Sociopathy, to him, Gershkovich is not flesh and blood, just a pawn. Desperation, it's a flail. Sometimes narcissists have such a self-centered worldview, they assume others do too. Battered narcissists overplay their hands, like insisting their lawyers called a terrible witness. And former Russian detainee Trevor Reed, who went through a very similar thing that Evan Gershkovich is going through right now, said, as a former wrongful detainee in Russia, I would just like to remind everyone that President Trump had the ability to get myself and Paul Whelan out of Russia for years and chose not to. I would be skeptical of any claims about getting Evan Gershkovich back in a day. So there you have an American journalist who was a former wrongful detainee in Russia calling Donald Trump out on his bluff, saying, listen, we were in jail in Russia for a while you were the president, but you didn't get us out, so why would we trust you about Evan Gershkovich? And it's worth pointing out that journalist, Trevor Reed, was wrongfully detained for over 3 years before he was released in 2022 under the Biden administration. So it makes you wonder, what is Donald Trump willing to give in return for the freeing of Evan Gershkovich? Because I want it to happen as well, but if Donald Trump's plan is to cede Ukrainian land to Russia and some sort of peace deal, then I'm not sure that is quite worth it. And TJ Ducklow, a senior advisor to the Biden campaign, said that the former president doesn't give a damn about the innocent Americans unjustly imprisoned by Putin, citing Trump's repeated attacks on members of the press. Trump has called journalists enemies of the people and pledged to imprison reporters whose coverage he doesn't like. Not all that dissimilar to what's happening right now to Evan Gershkovich in Russia, Ducklow said in a statement. He noted that Trump has said he turned down a deal to release former Marine Paul Whelan, who was arrested in 2018 on alleged suspicion of spying and sentenced to 16 years in prison. So Donald Trump using American journalists as political pawns, not only is it vacuous, but it only emboldens people like Vladimir Putin, people like Xi Jinping. Donald Trump's rhetoric has repeatedly been proven to embolden authoritarian dictators across the globe. That is the true risk of a second Trump term. Even if we put aside all of the domestic issues that we care about, like abortion, climate change, education reform, gun reform, the global implications of a second Trump term are terrifying. He would weaken our alliances with other Western countries. He would cut deals with his friend Vladimir Putin and embolden Vladimir's authoritarian urges. Don't take it from me, take it from Nikki Haley. Before she caved in and kissed Donald Trump's ring, she was railing against him for being weirdly pro-Russia. Watch this clip.
Anybody that can't call out a dictator, that's a problem. You know, he should be calling, not just calling Putin out for what happened to Navalny, he should be calling Putin out for the fact that he's got Evan Gershkovich as a hostage. He should be calling Putin out for invading Ukraine. He should be calling Putin out for the fact that now they are surrounding the Baltics and Putin's getting ready for his next act. When he said that day, it emboldened Putin. And
Nikki Haley is obviously a spineless hack who doesn't care about democracy, but when she was campaigning against Trump, she was actually right about that. She called it out how she saw it, and she was correct. I'm going to play a clip of my interview with former Representative Adam Kinzinger, where we talk about the threat of Russian propaganda seeping into the American mainstream of politics. Before I play it, make sure you leave a like on this video, comment a blue heart if you got this far, hit that subscribe button, and play this clip.
To sit there and say that Vladimir Putin is on our side or is on Trump's side. Let's keep this in mind. The Russian economy, which is now pivoted to basically being a one-trick pony, a war economy that's funded by oil. It reminds us of a lot of Middle East countries. The Russian economy is the size of Italy against the United States economy, which basically exceeds that of all of Europe. If we want to align ourselves with a failing country, a declining population, with drunk men that basically all die at the age of 62, if they don't stab each other to death prior, and send people to where there's been 450,000 casualties. Every 5 days, there are as many Russians killed as we lost in 20 years in Afghanistan. If that is the leader in the country that you want to hold up on a pedestal, be my guest. But let me tell you, as a Christian myself, this idea that Vladimir Putin is somehow the defender of Christianity when he's prosecuting Christians in Crimea, when they left Bucha and Irpin, you see that they abused and killed priests and preachers that were there, Baptist ministers, Orthodox priests. When you see missiles indiscriminately flying into churches, there is no God I follow that would take a man like Vladimir Putin and say, you are the example of me. And unfortunately, these people have been abused for their money. They've been abused for their vote. And they've been abused for the power that every individual American can give to a politician by a terrible man, and now the lackeys that follow him, like, frankly, even Speaker Johnson and all the Republicans in Congress.
Yeah, especially Marjorie Taylor Greene, Marjorie Taylor Greene. But it really feels like a lot of this is a function of Russian propaganda seeping into the mainstream. I mean, you have people like Tucker Carlson, who actually, he's not on Fox News anymore, but he was spewing Russian propaganda on Fox News. Vivek Ramaswamy copying Kremlin talking points verbatim. Elon Musk owns X, and on X, there's a bunch of Russian propaganda. And it really feels like Russia is waging this invisible holy war on the West through Russian propaganda. So do you think, sorry, what were you going to say?
No, I was going to say that I think you're absolutely right. So in 2015, I remember Dana Rohrabacher was a congressman from California, and I would debate with him on the Foreign Affairs Committee. He was a Republican, and he was pro-Putin, only pro-Putin in Congress. And people would tell me, Adam, don't engage with him. We literally think he was on the FSB payroll, by the way. And so, but 5 years later, or what, now we're 9 years later, the entire party is almost in this position. And I think it is absolutely the impact of things like Twitter. I think it's the misinformation from Twitter or from X or from whatever,
TikTok.
Truth Social, TikTok, that then leaks over to a Fox News story that then has millions of eyeballs. Or you can see the direct influence where a story comes out and it's put out by what seems like a normal website. It'll be like, the News Today or whatever. And then there's a couple of websites that pick it up, and then a mainstream media website picks it up because it's been picked up by enough. And that is directly traced to the Kremlin. And the problem is, in a free society, we're not pushing back against this. We don't have a government agency that's trying to, in essence, re-educate Americans about the truth. Because if we created something like that, Rand Paul would call it the Truth Department in 1984. So we're fighting with one hand tied behind our back and just hoping that freedom and the internet overcomes Russian propaganda. And unfortunately, it's not working.